And just wait, I think Rafael is running the meeting, so I'll just also make both. Hansel, you're also presenting something, right?
Maybe we should wait Rafael then.
Yeah, no, he's gonna make you both of you co-hosts. And
Sorry, I had to solve a really quick problem, but things are set.
you don't need another minute. If we can wait, no problem.
No, I already did what I had to do. Well, I think I could get a cup of water. That will take
Okay,
just
yeah,
enough.
sure.
Okay. So do we start now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Is it recording, or I think you
Yeah.
stopped, right?
No, I stopped and I started again.
Ah, okay. It's not. Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me just share. So, good evening, everyone. Hope you all had a happy new year. I'm a bit okay. Okay. So this is very, I don't know, corporate-y. So you have to excuse my template. So I thought it would be a good idea to have a meeting that would be a sort of 2023 review, because I think it was a very, well, it was a very long year, as all of them are, but I think it was a year with a lot of ups and downs in our group, and I think it's good to look back, see what we did, see what we could have done better, see what we want to do, considering what we actually accomplished. I think this is something that that it would be nice to do every year, and a final proposal that I'm gonna make at the end of this meeting, but I can mention it right now, is that I think it would be nice for us to have a report, like it could be a Google form, something that's simple, of what our expectations for the group are, either collectively or individually. But so I've divided this presentation into 4 topics: completed projects, current working groups, current projects, and on hold or unrealized projects. And in the end, I wrote down some things that I think are some future challenges that await for us. And this is all, it's not something that I did alone. Most of this was done by talking to people, and also seeing other moments where we tried to synthesize what we were doing. And it was very good, I think, to do this right after we had our Brazilian national meeting, which was last week. Renzo will talk about the meeting after I finish. I don't know if it's better if you jump in when we're talking about completed projects, because that's like the last project we completed in the year. I'm thinking the meeting is a completed project, and then we can go on with the rest. I think we can do that. Okay, so I'll start and then I'll unshare, and then you can share, and then I'll reshare. So I think this is a list of stuff that we actually did. And when I say completed projects, not all of this was initially thought about as a project, but most of this stuff is things that we actually did. We produced either something that's an essay, a contact, you know, it's something that we can say it was finished, even if there are further steps to be taken. The first one is the contact with the Vienna students. And I think it's a worthy mention here because it was our first experience officially dealing with other collectives. This is something we talked a lot about in the beginning of the year, how this was some kind of experience that we wish, even though this, I think if I recall correctly, this was like late 2022, beginning of 2023, right? Most of these dealings, right? Or am I missing something?
When it happened,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it started. Like I can't even check here, but it was early in the year and it lasted until around April, perhaps.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Because I remember there was a Christmas break, and that was relevant for some of the.
Yeah, no, it's true. We were already starting last year. We continue over the end of the year. Then we had a couple of meetings early in 2023, and the last contact was about I think April.
Okay. So I think it fits. I didn't know about the Turkish. Oh, the Turkish is the estimate.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember, of course. True. That was in February in
That
2023 also.
that
No.
was no, that was end of 2022. But just to say, it's not our first experience dealing with other collectives.
No. That's great. I didn't remember. I remember the estimate meeting, but I did remember.
I think it was
But
early
okay.
2022. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, either way, it was a significant experience to the point that we, in a sense, I think some of our group goals became clear at that moment. Another thing that was important, even if in the end we saw that it was insufficient, was the WhatsApp infrastructure improvement. We did the community. We managed to merge all the groups into one single community, but still, there's a lot of improvement to be done in that area because WhatsApp does not keep records. It's very easy to lose yourself in discussions. So this is something that even if we did do it, we we've been talking about lately to move to Discord, which I'll talk about a bit later on. We had the Varn interview. He invited Gabriel for a discussion after he reached out, as I recall correctly, to talk with the man, the math dude, the category Dreamcats
Alex.
guy, Alex. And we had a very interesting interview. And I think it was very productive in the sense that Varn, at least, seemed to continue to be interested in what we are doing. And I think this is something that we should cultivate, these quality interactions, which are not just one-off interactions, but in a sense, we can establish some more long-standing interlocutors. We also, we didn't publish, but we did finish writing. And we did also send it the division of labor essay, which was an essay that was proposed for a collection on real abstraction, edited by historical materialism, This collection will also have an essay by Caron. But I think what was very good in these discussions is that many of the preparatory discussions for the essay ended up opening up the space for I think a very important text, which is in the process of being expanded and written, revised, which is the Social Worlds and Social Formations essay, which they thought was too much for the book, but at least I think it was very important also to set us on track for discussing some fundamental elements of our framework. There was also the contact with the Communist Caucus. So I don't know if someone that was more in the loop can explain this better.
I could. We were approached by somebody from the Communist Caucus, which is an organization inside of the DSA. They recognized on their own a similarity with our work, and I must say both the Vienna students and the Communist Caucus came to us because of the text we wrote for Crisis and Critique. So it goes to show that this text do have like a resonance of people looking us up because they see some similarity, they find it singular in some way. And we agreed to plan some sort of collaboration with the Communist Caucus. The similarities between their line of work and ours was pretty explicit. They have this concept of proletarian disorganization, which has a lot to do with things we were working on. And then we planned like a first round of contact, which was we went to a meeting of theirs, and Renzo, Fatima, and Dennis presented on our work. I think it was a big success. It was a really nice meeting, and they were clearly interested in what we were presenting. And now we're waiting to also share our stage with them. So they are going to come to one of our Monday meetings and present something. But they are interested in a long-term partnership in the sense of developing something steadier, some type of engagement. So the current thing that we did, the first thing that we completed was the first enduring contact. We have a WhatsApp group with them. They are there to talk and discuss things with us. We went and presented to them, and we have an agreement that hasn't been fully completed yet, where they're coming to present something in our group. But that's, let's say, the completed part, right? Then there's a promised longer type of engagement in the future, in the horizon, that we can also explore with them.
Great, thanks, Gabriel. Besides that, we've also had the establishment of the Logic Task Force, which might be something weird to put as a completed project, but I think that if we take into account that this is a space where this is like our own mini STP stack exchange, where people can air out their doubts, discuss. I think this is something it's one of our most lively discussion groups that we actually have online, you know? So I think it's important. I think migrating to Discord might facilitate because better archiving will be available, but I think it's something that's also important to remark. There was also the STP work in Lebanon, the contact with local militants, and then there's the possible translations of STP works into Arabic. This is something that was articulated, especially between Gabriel and Fatima. And there was, as a latecomer, the second Brazilian STP meeting. It's actually 2024, but since the end of the STP fiscal year was only last week, I think we can push that into our 23 accomplishments. And Renzo will now present a short, or not so short, because I think it's very important. So please, I think we can, if people who weren't, people who want to know more about how the event was, I think this is a fair time also to talk because it was a very enriching experience. So, Renzo, I think it's
Can you guys see my screen?
yes.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a photo, one of those slideshows, literally like photo galleries. But I just wait. My face is pink. No. Yeah, I mean, guys, people who were in the encontro, please interrupt me and you can compliment with whatever. I just put together a bit of the information, the material, and some photos just to get a feeling of how it was. And I think we all left very happy and surprised with how well it went. So this was the poster of the event. So it was a 2-day event in Rio. The first day it was an open event, and the second day was a more internal event day. Some members in Brazil traveled to Rio to go to the meeting, and other were already in Rio. And so we did, in the first day, we did a first round of sort of like mini presentations where each member pitched the ideas that were floating in his head, and he wanted to sort of like share. So it was very informal, but it was a very nice moment. And then towards the evening, we proceeded to the more sort of like the main event, which was basically we invited guests, people who we more or less knew, and so we invited 4 speakers to comment on the translation of the working through text, which we translated and renamed it as the point of view of political organization. So we invited people from different sort of like political and academic and theoretical sort of strands. So we got like a diverse reaction to the text. Before that, we also did an introduction to of the ideas of STP and of the text. And then the day closed very late. It actually like ended by 10 o'clock at night with discussion after this. And then in the second day, we did some sort of like internal discussions where we planned ahead some activities that we will omit. And then but I think the sort of like very nice outcome of the event that actually came before for the event that we got to prepare was a printed booklet of the working through translation, and it also contained the manuscript of the social. Yeah, you can close up on Rafael's physical version. So we did a very limited edition of 50 copies of the booklet that which we manually and locally manufactured one day before of the event. So this is the booklet. It's based on the poster from the School Occupations, and we call it working materials. And here's the table of content. Like, it was very surprising how we managed to put together all this in such a short time. I mean, Gabriel did a lot of work to actually diagramar and put together the whole material. And then in 2 days and I mean, the important thing that I didn't mention, I guess, is that the whole event was in a, how do you say gráfica?
Yeah,
Printing
press.
house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
print.
Yeah, a printing house, but not like a publishing house, like literally like they print.
A place where you go to print banners for militant marches.
Yeah, it's called press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a press, yeah, but like
Yeah.
not the publishing house, yeah.
Yeah, it's a press.
Thanks.
Which is also displays that Rafael, Gabriel, and Victor and Fernanda and others have been meeting, presenting ideas from STP and inviting other collectives. So we used that space and they had the infrastructure to like actually print stuff. So we used it. And so here's the contents that it contained: the working through translation, it contained the manuscript of the social atoms. And it also contained a very cool,
Like a dictionary.
yeah, like a dictionary or like a small atlas of our diagrams.
Renzo, could you show it? I think it would be cool to, I mean, I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah, the PDF, right?
Yeah, at least the bestiary and maybe the map.
Yeah. So here's the PDF. After we can. So towards the end, we get this very cool dictionary of diagrams with the conjuncture thesis and our main diagrams with explanations of each.
Just a side note, it's weirdly, it looks a bit weird on the page, like it's displaced because it's formatted for printing, right? So it's kind of pushed to one side and to the other depending on the page, yeah.
And at the end, we also contain like a sort of map of the internal WhatsApp community that reflected the internal organization. Here is also to see how proof that we actually like did it by hand. Like this is the printing, I don't know how, the template, and we actually went through a lot to like figure out the right method to put together the whole thing, like the glue and everything. So it was somewhere between in between like a very artisanal and very professional. And here we sold the booklets in the event, and the money we got we used to give back to the press which hosted the event, and with which we have like a ongoing sort of like tie. And here's the schedule of the first day. These are the mini presentations. Here is Rafael, he was the
MC.
Yeah, the MC, our showman, then hostess. He's selling our booklets sold out. And these are some pictures of the mini presentations of all the members: Michael, Fernanda, Alain, who traveled, Eduarda, Caron, and so on.
I think it would be just so people can get a view of what we discussed, these mini presentations.
Yeah.
And just going to say what was presented, because there was the discussion. It started out with Fernanda. She did a discussion on climate and law, trying to tie modes A and B. It was followed by a discussion from Alan, which tries to differentiate modes B and the problem of the state. Then it was followed by Michael's discussion on capitalism, slavery, and peripherization from the work of Brazilian sociologist Florestan Fernandes. Then after that, we had Renzo, right?
Yeah.
Renzo's discussion on, you didn't put your topic here, but what was
yeah, autonomism and Marxist Leninism.
Yeah. And then there was a presentation by Eduarda on Hunter Schafer, Sulamith Firestone, transsexuality, and radical feminism and queer. And it was followed by a presentation by Caron on dissonance and social synthesis, one by me on institutionality and ideology from the framework of STP, one by Vitor on the limits and possibilities of organization of invisible fights, which is the name of a collective he is a part of. And then there was to be a presentation by Gabriel, but we ran out of time, so he took one for the team.
And yeah, and they were very informal and very short. Like they were like 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes conversations with people giving some feedback. Then we did an introduction of the text. So I showed like this diagram showing a bit of like the interactions we have with other political sequences, processes, and organizations to try to sort of like answer what subset we are part of. That was a bit like the and then we went through the main thesis of vulgarization, peripherization, and so on, to give like a sort of introduction and also a very quick summary of the ideas. And after that, the main event, which was the panel, there was Isabella Benassi, Cassia, Natan, and Regis. And we were very surprised because it was like a very hot day and the air conditioner was supposed to be installed, but it was not. So, I mean, and there were, I think we had around 40, maybe even more throughout the day, people who sit there and resisted with us through the weather. And yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to like summarize, like talk more about like what they said, or
Yeah, one thing I thought we could say is that it's hard to gauge. I mean, I think the public was very nice to see a lot of people there, but I think what is very singular about this is that this is a very unlikely kind of group of guests to see on the same panel in Brazil. Benassi comes from the Workers' Party, it's like the hegemonic left, which has a lot of fight with more autonomist fronts. You don't usually see people like Regis and Isabella in the same group discussing things, and it wasn't a debate about their differences. It was like everyone focusing on our text one way or another. And Natan comes from a very particular group. He's a physicist, but also studies Hegel and how Marxism applies in the periphery of the world system. That's also different from both of them. And Cassia comes from a less kind of politically organized field, but she's kind of an upcoming philosopher, especially philosopher of language, analytic philosopher. She works a lot with Caron as well. She was more interested in, let's say, originally more in the technical part of what we do, but also gave a very interesting testimony about difficulties of engaging politically and how these things could also lead to interesting theoretical developments. And because they were very distinct as guests, the audience was also very distinct. You had people coming from very different backgrounds in the same kind of public there engaging with us. I think, more than the quantity, the quality of that heterogeneous mixture is very telling that something is going in the right direction. And people came from, this is important, there are some people who came from outside of the city to see STP's meeting. I know of 2 or 3 people who travel for this, like besides the people that we invited or people from from the collective, you know. So it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we also faced the challenge of like many people hadn't were like watching the reaction to a text that I think many of them hadn't read, and there was this, of course, the thing of coming into contact with the with SP's ideas. So it was in some sense arid to people who I talked to, but I think people left with a feeling that there was something there that was worth trying to understand. So I think people who I spoke to that said it was very hard to understand, at the same time wanted to like read the text to actually do the work and see what it was about. So that was I think also good. The second day it was just the few of us, the members were like, I guess, in 8 or 9 people. This is in the sort of garden or the backyard part of the press. And we went through like hours of abstract and stressful discussions in order to like come together for some basic tasks for the next year for the Brazilians group, which isn't so far like a group. Like we sort of like coalesced around the Monday meetings, but we were with this event, we were trying to come up with specific projects we could sort of like keep working on in Portuguese and so on. So yeah, so what we decided is that we would sort of write down, each of us who presented the mini presentation would write down a report that would be also translated to English, so we could also share with you guys these debates, and people who were interested would sort of like pursue each his sort of like line of research in this space based on what they presented. We also decided on trying to put together a new booklet with the working through translation, the commentaries of the invited speakers and our reply to them, and see if we could publish it somewhere. We also, we also have, I mean, the text will probably come out online soon but we wanted to also, we're thinking of putting together this sort of like booklet with the replies and try to pitch it to some publishing house. And then there's also the project of the book, the livrão, the big book, which I think we can, I don't know when, maybe Gabriel wants to say something now or later. But yeah, so that's what we came with, and that's a picture of all of us in the last day, very tired and yeah.
I can perhaps say just something really quick. I think that people would probably need a longer meeting to see if it makes sense or not. But I feel like if you could go back to the previous drawing, the board, what I think it's very important here that it's probably worth just mentioning is that we identify these 4 things to do, right? One of them is already done, which is the translated version of the working through is coming out in a Brazilian publication, but it's an online publication, and we're not going to change anything about the text. We're just going to publish the translation. Then we said, well, but how can we push forward and not let the contact we had with these guests just die out as if it's just a panel, because most of them are organized one way or another. They have militant groups that are interesting for us to contact. So the idea was to do to solve that issue and another couple of issues with this idea of a small booklet that's straight to Portuguese, because it would contain the working through translation, the guests' commentaries, our responses, but it would also include like a contextualization of our work for the Brazilian context. It wouldn't be developed just like, hey guys, send us your writing and we'll publish it. We're going to try to engage them like in a continuous conversation with us. And because it's going to be done in Portuguese, it's also something that allows us to create a forum in Portuguese to develop some of the things, because some of the members of STP, I mean, we have a lot of Brazilian members, but some of them are not necessarily most comfortable in English to develop things. So this would be like a concrete thing we could work on. That could also, that would have a concrete outcome, because we would try to publish rather than self-publish. We'd go through a real publishing press, but also a way to create a more enduring relationship with this guest that we invited, right? The other thing is, I'm not going to go into it because it's just like also trying to make these short presentations we gave become something more enduring. So to become presentations in the Monday meetings, to become reports, short reports in English that everyone here can read and comment on, and perhaps, you know, find points that merit like longer debates, smaller, like small research groups, or even like small publications, like individual publications based on it. So again, it's a matter of making it endure. These two things have a bit of that purpose. But the thing that we wanted to discuss, because we came out, I think everyone that was there, once the booklets were sold out, once we saw our texts in print, it was very clear that we are closer to having a book that people can read and that introduces what we're doing and that is going to qualitatively shift how people deal with our work. We're closer to that than we thought. So we thought of proposing, so we call this the booklet, livreto, it's like small book, and this the big book, the livrão. And the idea is that it would be a bilingual thing, so we would work on it both in Portuguese and in English, because some people work a bit better in Portuguese, but we would be like moving back and forth between the two things. We would use the two texts that we already have, one that is done, the working through text, and the draft of the social atoms one as a sort of skeleton. And the idea is to see if it is of interest to the collective, to turn this project into something that can drive us to, let's say, the end of 2025, you know, or like a longer thing that it's like a development on the Atlas. The Atlas had a very small thing binding people's contributions, which was one diagram, right? This time we have like a complete text plus a very long draft. So it's easy to find missing pieces, things that need to be developed, side tracks that we could add and things like this. And it would serve as a skeleton for us to add and arrive at like a big book that we could, you know, publish as the STP book kind of thing, you know? So I think you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like this was a lot of our kind of feeling by the end of this whole thing, that this is closer perhaps than we originally thought, you know? And so we wanted to relay this idea to you guys. Of course, we need to decide something together, but it felt like a development on the Atlas, like something that we can rally around, we can work together, it can facilitate conversations, set on like smaller research projects, facilitate integration between particular research interests that we have, because we have like a very robust, like it's a skeleton with a medulla inside, you know, like it has some meat to it, that we can already kind of patch other things into it, and it will be much more coherent than the Atlas ever was. So it looked like a potential project for us to focus on in the near future and strategize around it if possible. So I'd say that these were the four things that we decided, right? We decided that we're publishing the translation as is in Portuguese online. We're using the printed translation as a kind of stepping stone to bring these guests into a longer debate, but for a Portuguese publication, which shouldn't like be, you know, the main focus of the collective. It would be a smaller thing, but we also felt like the event gave us a good sense of how how much closer we are in terms of what we have to offer in writing and so on, to something that we could put out there, you know? Not sure if I
Oh, and
forgot.
aren't we also planning on trying to print the booklet we did in English for the international members? Is that
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, we could try that, but I think that I mean it's up to you guys if you guys think it's a good idea. We have the whole material ready. We could just adapt it. It's already translated to English. It was just a matter of using the same kind of basis to throw the new content in there, the English content. But I think it's also a matter of strategic interest. Like, if you guys think it's worth having something like this, if we should do it, we should send you guys the PDFs for individual printing if you want. Like, what you guys want us to do about it? You know, like, I think there are a couple of ways we could do it. One thing we could do, which wouldn't be very hard, I think, would be to print it here in a slightly larger quantity so that we can do something slightly less artisanal, like rather than hand make all the books, which is very tiring. And right now it's Vitor, myself, Rafael, and Fernanda that are constantly in Rio. That would mean that we would have to do it. So if we have a slightly higher number, a bigger quantity of copies, we could do a slightly more industrial thing and send a bunch of copies to everyone, and we could, you know, sell them, send them to people or whatever. So it could still be cheap, but it's yeah, I think it's also something to debate. We didn't come to a consensus on that, nor couldn't we, right, without talking to everyone.
Yeah, we also rediscovered all like the paradigms of production in 2 days. We went through like Toyotism, Fordism,
Yes.
the division of labor. We went through all of that. It was very
Very pedagogical.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm very impressed by all of this, and like very excited to be a part of this group from watching just these pictures. And it must have taken so much work to hold the event, but also make all this material. Could you
Dude,
talk a bit about like how long it took to prepare all of this
man?
ahead of time?
The event or the book or both?
I guess both, yeah. I mean, like, so just getting people's interest, was it a lot of word of mouth kind of work? Or like contacting what was it more like a call for papers, like, because we were talking about having something like this for the wider group. So yeah, I definitely want to consider how we might do events like this in the future.
So I think that's as Gabriel said and Renzo, I think that there's something that really helped us, which is bringing together this diverse group of people to do the presentations. In a sense, it helped because each of the people would, in a sense, bring not their own crowd, but there would be people coming by. We did a lot of you know posting on Instagram, Twitter, but I think it's not. I don't think we had like, oh, we are going to publicize this in the most professional way. I think we each talked to people we knew who could be interested. There was a lot of, I think, direct speaking, and I think that part, in a sense, Man, Gabriel's already calculating international funds. But I'm all for it. But I think that in a sense, it was more, you know, talking directly to people. Now, if I recall correctly, we've been talking about doing this event since maybe September. I mean, at least in a very, you know, oh, it would be good to do this event. But if we really get down to it, I think we started working on actively at the end of November with the translation of the text, and then late December with the finishing of the text, and then there was the diagramming that Gabriel painstakingly responsible for. And I think, you know, doing the art, I think it was, you know, I think it was a month and a half maybe, right? Of
Yeah. I mean,
concentrated work.
on one hand, we had one meeting with everyone to plan the event where we decided like the sort of general schedule, like the idea that we would have like a panel and decided we would invite. All the rest was sort of like unevenly distributed, and sort of like towards the very end, the rest of the people sort of start to like get involved and participate. But I'd say that, yeah, there was, I think, putting up the panel, which, and the sort of like the fact it was a diverse thing, and the mouth-to-mouth element sort of like helped coalesce a bit more people. I mean, we expected 20 to 30 people, basically like us plus each one bringing one or two, but we got actually a bit more than that. Yeah.
I think the two things that are important there. I think that what prompted the meeting was also that some members would be coming to Brazil who were outside, so we didn't have to spend much money. We're taking advantage of a specific. Actually, the worst thing we did was we delayed a lot deciding the exact date, and perhaps we could have even gotten more people from the collective to come from other cities, and we didn't manage to. We didn't manage to put something hybrid that others could. So there were some ideas we didn't manage because it was a very kind of hard thing to align what the dates would be. But I think that one very important thing is that the core idea was organizing something internal. Even the guests, they were planned on people we wanted to hear as SPT, so we could develop what we're doing. It wasn't like who are the people who are going to bring most. You know, some of the guests weren't from the city. We brought them from other cities, and we paid for their tickets and so on. So it was very inward focused. That's also why it was a pleasant surprise to see that still it has a bigger audience than we expected. I really think that both this and something else that is going on in Rio, which is connected, the only reason we got such a good space, the only reason why we managed to do the booklet, it's because Rafael, myself, Fernanda, and Victor are creating like an ongoing relation with the space where we're every week going there and presenting STP's work to whoever wants to come. We're starting to get different organizations to come to present their political experience. And Rafael acted in a commercial for the printing press even. But we are not presenting that model of an action or activity yet because we want to try it a bit more, but then we want to present it within STP as a potential reproducible thing that others could also try, because it's like a local thing with a local presence, but that involves other groups. And I think that streamlined a bit of this process because we already had really good connections. Like renting a place like this would be outside of our budget, you know, and having the flexibility and having the printing available for very cheap for us and things like this, it was only because of them. But I think it's very doable in other places. I don't think I think we did very little promotion online, very, very little. Like I didn't invite anyone. Like I didn't even send a message. So I just said like vaguely once or twice online, this is gonna happen. You know, so I do think this is possible to do in other places. We clearly like officially agreed in this meeting that we had, Renzo said, that we weren't gonna invite big shots. We felt like the idea of having like bigger names who might attract more attention to the collective. Probably we should exploit that opportunity in a online way so that we don't need to pay, you know, plane tickets for celebrities or anything, and that we could do it in a bilingual or English way so that we all get involved. So we also consciously chose people who we felt were good interlocutors, but not necessarily well-known interlocutors. So I think they brought their own groups and people who knew them, but it's not like they were famous people who, you know, brought a general audience because of it and gave us credibility or anything like that. It was really kind of thought inwardly first. But there was also that debate. We didn't add this here, but we felt like, okay, now we have some experience to do the symposium that we wanted to do before. You know, it is doable. People can extract things from our text and engage in a conversation about what we're doing. Like it's clear we're already at that level. You know, we don't need to do a symposium about other people's work. We could definitely do a symposium where we say, read this text and comment on it with us, you know, something like that. It would work if we wanted. So I'm not sure if that answers like is it doable elsewhere, but I do think that it is a replicatable model. I don't think we have that much more traction in Rio than in many other places. I think there are other places that we could produce a similar thing. As for the booklet, I think that it was very labor intensive and kind of lonely in the beginning, where we just had the formatting, the translation, revision. But once we got to the production process, I think we engaged about 10 to 12 people, like friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, you know. And there was a point here in my house where we had, you know, 8, 9 people around 2 tables, and we were like doing line production, you know, of cutting things and passing glue and stapling and so on. If you are in a place where you're kind of alone, I think it's not a good format to do it. It was actually very therapeutic also to do it everyone together, I think. If we could have like, you know, some type of let's build something together type of activity every Monday meeting, I would definitely think we could spend 15 minutes on that every meeting. It was really good. But yeah, that's kind of my impression on the procedure, you know.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something which I think is really important. I think we really aimed for creating like lasting relationships with the people involved. So I think this is a very important point. I mean, like Gabriel said, we weren't thinking about what could be good for, you know, bringing a lot of people to the event, because our main interest was to really test the ground on our ideas, see how they stand, how people receive them. And it was actually something that we talked about, that it was, I won't say it's a failure, but one problem that we noticed is that in the end, we didn't get a chance to, in the event, to discuss we didn't get a chance to discuss with the people who were reading our work. I mean, we talked with them like outside the meetings. It was very good to see that there was a lot of debate going on, but I do think that it, in a sense, it really, at least from my point of view, it really confirmed a wager that I think we do in this group, that is our discussions, they tend to be very very long-winded. You know, they go on, they extend themselves, but it really makes, I think, the discussions more worthwhile. There's a qualitative aspect that I think was very essential for doing this event. I think if we ever did an event with big shots, and I think it's one thing that we've talked about, I think we'd have to really think how we would structure it, because maybe we'd had to think how to approach it. But in the end, I think like it was very good for establishing future relations around our discussions.
Yeah,
Wow.
also about the funding of the event, like I mean, most people either were already in Rio or managed to go by themselves, by their own fund to the event. We covered, we used our funds to basically cover, I think, the travel of one member and one or two invitations. But I mean, we actually felt like we end up and the printing of the booklet, it paid itself, right?
Yeah.
So it was basically like a bit of food and so on. So I think it would be nice to think of how it could work for the US, since we're structuring our recurrent fund. So I don't know. I mean, probably like an international conference is pretty expensive, but I wonder how like a US or Europe based kind of thing could work out in the long run. But yeah, we will share everything once we organized.
So do we get back to or do we stay here for a while? Do we get back to the other discussions, or?
Yeah, I think so. We could come
Okay.
back to this later too.
Okay, so now I'll get back to the corporate year in review. So these were our accomplishments this year. And as I said, there are three other aspects of this year in review that I'd like to mention. First, there are the current working groups. I mean, working groups is a very loose term. It does not have to mean that there is a WhatsApp group. No, there are asterisks on the WhatsApp groups. But there is, of course, I think this needs to be mentioned because this is something we've discussed about. There is, of course, the STP Monday meeting, which is where we are right now. So in the map, this is where we are, which is generally a meeting for sharing private or collective ongoing research, a discussion of organizing matters that concern the group, and the presentations by invited guests. I mentioned this here because we've talked about with Regis is a Hegelian, like really repeats it a lot. So we've talked in the past, we've talked in the past about making the Monday meeting not as a starting point, but as an end point, a place where our discussions end up, and not a place where our discussions are dependent upon. And this is especially because there are only 52 Mondays a year, and we are a very large group. So even if we occupied all meetings with presentations, we have about 20 to 25 active members. That would mean about 2 meetings per person if we do it like that. So I think it's very important that we think of these Monday meetings also as not like our main point of focus, but as a sort of backbone where we end up. There are, of course, the administrative groups, STP org, where we discuss organizing matters, and STP finance, where we are starting to discuss financial matters, as Renzo talked. But more importantly, and I mentioned this because I think it gives a bit of the breadth of our scope. We currently have research groups focused on mode A, on mode B, on mode C. We have the Social Worlds and Social Forms Research Group, which is a group that formed around the time we were doing the discussion on the essay for the Real Abstraction book. There's the Logic Task Force. There's I think it's, I don't know if it's actually active yet, but there was a proposal for a Gender and Sexuality Research Group. I think there was also a proposal for a Zapatism research group. There's also a research group that is dedicated to trying to systematize Teia dos Povos, né? Which is a very interesting political group here in Brazil. And there are, of course, what I called collaborative groups, which are groups that are not like research intensive, but they are closer to our ideal of militant inquiry, in a sense. There's the ECO, the Espaço Comum das Organizações, which can be translated as a common space of organizations, which is the Tuesday meetings that me, Gabriel, Fernanda, and Vitor have been organizing here in Rio, and it's in the Pavunão Press. There's the SIBCOM articulation, there's the STP Communist Caucus articulation, and then there's, of course, which isn't a WhatsApp group, but there's the general interest in thinking about organizational intervention practice, which is our way of trying to see how this interaction between different organizations works. Well, so that's what we have in terms of current working groups. Do you think the suggestion you made? Oh, this is I wasn't here. I just wanna I'll answer this very quickly. I don't know if I think this is more because I wasn't in the discussion, but I think it's fair to say that I think any research group has merits, especially when it's connected to our ongoing research. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But I think it also making a sense also means people being available for for participating, etc. I don't know if Gabriel wants to comment a bit.
On what Reza said?
Reza's message.
Yeah, I was just gonna write something. I was gonna say, I think that it has been shown that for projects inside of STP, Spinoza has something to say, like the ethics, like if it endures in existence, then it has merits, rather than inverse, right? It will exist if it has merits. It's the inverse. It has merits if it exists. So if you try it, nobody comes. If we try it and we don't manage to pursue it to the end, then perhaps it didn't have that capacity. But in general, I think it's better to try than not to try things. But what I think it's been shown is that projects that do persist in being, right, in STP, usually they come from a mixture of things, like identifying people's interests, talking to them outside of the Monday meeting, creating something that has some concrete content. So I think it's a really good candidate because it wouldn't be hard to, use the contact with Daniel Tutt to organize like a panel to talk about new readings of Badiou, to have a separate group for this. I think all those things make a lot of sense, but it's just a matter of doing, Not sure if
Yeah, and I actually want to add, I think it's like really, 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 really good. The more I think we are able to not only propose but to endure, because I wholeheartedly agree. Because I think that's the hard part. I think we take for granted the fact that we've been meeting on Monday evenings for about 3 years. It takes a lot of endurance. So I think that's important to recollect. So we also have some ongoing projects. So this is not ongoing current work groups. These are like actual projects. We have the translation and expansion of the text working through political organization into Portuguese. So Renzo talked about this, about what we think for the future. So there are 2 book proposals. This is something that we talked about a bit. There's the idea about organizing an American symposium. There's no status update because this was done very quickly today, but I think it would be really incredible to have an American version. There's also the attempt to consolidate the space that Fernanda, Gabriel, me, and Vitor are trying to build. There's the idea of a Mode booklet in Portuguese, where we are trying to study the relation between the logic of affinity in anthropology, philosophy, and politics. And there's also this recent project that I think was begun by Gabriel and John about annotating an edition of 18th Brumaire of Marx. I think you posted this quite recently, right, in the group, I think. Yeah. So this is something interesting. And I put these here, not that there are not other projects, but I think these are very, concrete projects that are on their way. Yeah. My way of baiting is proposing funny WhatsApp titles like "To Be or Not to Be." Yeah, that's how I roll. But I do think I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's fundamentally important that we give some love to Mode B, to classical logic. So here's for us being able to make Mode B a bit stronger in 2024. But we have some, not some bad news. But there are some things that we just weren't able to pull out. And I think it's important for us to reflect a bit. We did not solve the central admin issue in the sense that we did. We had it was a very, I won't sugarcoat it. It was a very stressful development. I think it was tiring. I think it took a long time to develop. I think we spent too much energy trying to figure out the most correct way. Not that I think how it started was any good, because as y'all remember, just to have a scenes from the past episodes, we decided that the idea of the central admin position was the group is getting bigger. We are hoping to achieve newer heights. So there are a lot of tasks in the group that are taken and done by people like Gabriel, like Dennis, like Renzo, and their work is a bit not accounted for, but it's fundamental for the reproducing of the groups, besides other stuff. So it was very important. We thought that we could have a position of someone who would take this position and see themselves in the position of leading the group in organizing matters. And this admin position was not thought of as a tasking matter, as a matter of, oh, you're going to collect all the tasks, but as a position of organizing, and the position where someone would be paid. And then later on, we changed it not to someone being paid, but someone explaining what their needs would be, and then we would try and deal with them according to our capacities. We had an issue because there were two people interested initially, and we did not really think through what would be the way to decide if more than one person was interested. We wasted a lot of months before coming back to this issue. We wrote a document. I wrote a document. We voted on it, and then we ended up doing a lottery. Fernanda initially got the lottery. She even she set up a transition period. She even started taking on some of the tasks, but she said before she would take over that she did not think she was capable at that moment of taking on that position. And then we collectively decided that since Eduarda was the second place in the lottery, that we would go over the process with her. So theoretically, the February is the month that she will take over the position. We are in this month organizing the funding, so that why it's very important for people who are able to participate in our funding, recurrent funding, very important to say how much you are able to contribute, so we can have some safety measures for the person who is taking on these tasks. But and this is, I think, a personal note, I do think that this was an area that we really, I think it was not something that we handled very well, because I do think it pulled up some of the energy in the group, having to deal with this issue. And I think it's something that it would be good for us to learn collectively to deal with better. There's also the research coordinator. I talked to Caio today. He had warned us that he would have a hard month in December, and he's still a bit occupied. But as far as he and I remembered, Dennis won the lottery, and he won both lotteries, actually, the central admin and the research coordinator. I mean, Renzo, Dennis, we should have gotten you to do the lotto in Brazil. There was a lotto which was like $150 million. So I think we really should have gotten some numbers out of you, so we could have the funding, STP funding, guaranteed for life.
It was a bit wasted.
Yeah, no, it was our mistake. You wouldn't have guessed it. So I think this is on us. We should have come to you. But so Dennis, this is a heads up from what I talked to Kai. I think what's next is presenting a project for the RC position. Because as far as I remember, you were on board with that position, right?
Yeah, I'm on board. I think, yeah, we should discuss like how it might fit into everything we were just talking about as far as the book and
Great. I think that's a good idea. That's excellent, actually. Okay, so there's another thing that I think we did not fulfill, and this was something that we wanted to do, which was an online STP symposium. We talked about it, but I think that's one of the things that, because too many online discussions, and I think it fizzled out at about the same time the central admin discussions were going on. So I think this is something that, aside from the American Symposium, I think this is something that we really should get back on track. If someone wants to, take over, but if not, it won't prosper, as the Spinoza axiom says. And there's the STP booklet. Okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, just on that, because I think that there is one thing that is not in this list because it was never, it came up in a previous meeting. I discussed it more with John at some point, but I think that one thing that was proven with the event we did in Brazil is that we have enough consolidated material that smaller groups inside STP can come up with activities. If those activities are around that consolidated material, it will benefit the whole group. That's why we will also translate the commentaries from the Brazilians. I forgot to say this, we recorded their presentations, and we're gonna upload the video with subtitles so you guys can all also see what they said and we can all discuss it. But I think that also means that things like the symposium, like small events around publications we have, or teams and things like this, they can also serve specific functions. For example, integrating the US side of STP, which I think is the second largest country to have members, right? And the same way that we pulled together, and you guys also pulled together, you guys helped us also both financially, but with the fact that we all did it, you know, the texts were written together. But because of all of that, we all pulled together to increase the cohesion in the Brazilian group, because we're spread across many, many cities, in fact. We could try something similar in the States, you know? And I think that the symposium could acquire even more strategic function rather than an international thing that is totally delocalized. It's not related to any place. There's nothing concrete in terms of like intensifying the connections amongst the members in the STP, because we would just meet on Zoom. Even if that's the case, when we do an online event, I think it would be healthy, it would be interesting to think what type of event we could do that could have a kind of a particular result, you know, for the US front, that could like be a concrete thing to be discussed primarily and led by those members, you know, with whatever kind of concerns or interests you guys have on what's interesting, what's not. Most of our political connections right now are in the States, like Daniel Tuck, Yasha, John, the guys from the Communist Caucus. We have kind of some network. So also, you know, to come out of this with everyone feeling that they have a greater autonomy to find those bridges between the main STP kind of hub and outlets that might privilege subgroups of the STP, right? And the symposium, I think, has a really good connection with the US in that sense that we could explore. Sorry, yeah, that was it.
John?
Yeah, if I can also just riff on the US symposium thing. Because I think what you were just describing in terms of how you pulled off what you did in Rio also indicates some of the tension, because my understanding is a lot of y'all don't just live in Brazil, you live in Rio de Janeiro, right? And none of us live in the same state, let alone city. So I think that there's a tension here between the organizational, ecological relationships that can be symbiotic, like it sounds like you're developing with this space, and like the desire to bring people together on the unit of the United States. I would suggest that maybe in the perspective of our local, like that might not be the only unit to think of. Like obviously it'd be great if we could all get together, but there's, I think, especially if we want to try to have the same kind of like in-person, it's not going to be on the level of the states. It's going to be on the level of the Pacific Northwest, the South, Central, Southeast, blah, 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 right? So I think like there's still a lot for us to talk about, but I've been thinking about this a lot over the break, because I'm back in a place where I used to organize a lot, but it's changed quite a bit. The dynamics have changed, the actual people involved have changed, the ideologies that are predominant have changed. How much of the kind of organizational sensing that you all have developed in Rio has to be built elsewhere, I think. So yeah, so I just think that there's a tension there. I would love to get people together, but I think it will be a very different kind of expenditure of resources just to get people in the States together compared to what you all just did in Rio. And I'm not entirely sure that is the priority of priorities for building the States right now. As much as I would absolutely love to like meet up and like have one of these moments in person. So just want to put that out there in terms of like potential alternatives to explore.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think that there are some points you brought up there that really do create some specificities that really differentiate the possibility of doing a local event in Brazil and in the US. But I do think that one thing that is very important, and I think this circles back a bit, which is looking to see also what what do we expect of the event. I think one thing that really helped us more than of course, this is our second event. So in the first event, and this is something that we didn't talk here, but I think it's very important to mention. I think the hard part of the first event was seeing that we could be all in the same room. Even though we have a base in Rio, about 4 or 5 people, it was a bit also unthought of, you know? And it really was something that I think it was a real victory in a sense. And it really allowed some discussions to take a firmer foot. So, I mean, even if things are not thought of as an event, you know, even like a weekend retreat, even if there is no event with people discussing, it might have reasons for working out, you know, for establishing. But of course, I think this is this is a local discussion, and I'm intruding. But just to wrap up, yeah, I think what Gabriel says is very important. I mean, you have to see the field, because the US is large, but it might be more feasible, especially when we are able to join our resources. I think it's very important. It's very, I think it's very important to see what actually the costs are, you know. Not only financial costs, but also connecting costs. But don't worry, we will meddle, but we won't, you know, set up a military base in, I don't know, Alabama or whatever. So
Yeah, just I totally agree with the responses that are being had. Like, I think that there's definitely ways to do this. I just wanted to maybe separate a bit the idea of like a meeting and some of the dynamics that y'all are doing, especially because I am really, really interested in that latter part right now.
of course, the
Scene has
dynamic.
disintegrated in a lot of ways. So like how we build, like what you have with the space, you know, I think one of the things that's super interesting is like essentially you all like when you say that you internally focused and ask people around that, it's to me that's kind of like an actual way of testing political hypotheses, right? Like you ask people to come based around interests that kind of resonate, and then you see how the meeting goes about whether or not like what you're you know, not necessarily whether it's true or false, but whether or not it's important, relevant, you know. So that kind of process, I think right now when I'm coming across like the ruins of an old left and a new left attempting to build right now, like that kind of idea to me is really like intriguing for how we would like how we would connect. But yeah, that's doesn't mean we can't try to figure out resource fail. Like there's something in and of itself that's very important about that. So
Yeah, so just so we get along, because our meeting is of course already about the 1.5 hour mark. There's the booklet proposal that, and I put, and again, you know, just like the STP symposium, I'm putting the STP booklet as an unrealized project, because this was one of the things that we said we would think through this year. So that's why it's here on the list. Okay, I know we are working on it. I know there's going to be further discussions, but I think it's important also to to see what we've accomplished and what we did not accomplish. And then there's also the STP Discord. John has bravely is bravely spearheading this task. We'll have a meeting on Sunday. So if anyone's also interested, we can also work this out. But I think the goals are very simple, just to establish a Discord where we can finally move off the WhatsApp hellscape and have archives of our discussions. So just to end the meeting on a higher note, I don't know if it's a higher note because it's like future challenges, but I've separated about 4 things that I think we should work on, which I think is very important for future endeavors. First, I think like there is a very large problem, something that we talked about in the group in the meetings in Brazil. It's none of your fault. It's all imperialism, American imperialism all the way down. And we do have a multi-language group. And I know from the Brazilian side, there are a lot of people who either participate less or don't even participate because they are non-native English speakers. So I do think that this so I do think that this is something we have to think through. I remember, I think Gabriel mentioned this in his 5-year, 10-year plan meeting, right? The language problem. But I don't have any solutions. I just think that this is something that's important for us to deal with, to see our group as a polylingual group, and not simply as an English speaking group. Because I think that, and I think this means working more with translation tools. This is something I think we have to have on our horizon. Another point that I think is important to mention, and which deals specifically also with what we said, is more diversified local cooperation and autonomy. As I said, I think like we have the Monday meetings, but I think we are much more than a group that meets every Monday. We have a set of ideas that are more or less consolidated. We have a shared point of view. I would even say that we have a culture, a working culture, a group culture, a research culture. So I think it's very important for the group for us to intensify these local forms of cooperation. Local, not only in the geographical sense, but in the sense that they will be local in relation to the global Monday meeting, And I think this connects very much with the problem of leadership in our group, or distributed leadership. We've talked about this, and this is some of the reasons why we try to establish the central admin position and the research position, the RC position. I think that part of something that strains us from being more, from more autonomous groups developing, is that the sense of leadership is not so widely circulating in the group, So I think it's important also for us to have this concern, how to empower members to take on more responsibilities and more freedoms, either in research or also in the organizing of the group, So I think this is something that we have to, I think we have to have in our horizon also. And last but not least, this is something that was suggested by Renzo, but I think it's very important. Also understanding how we might foster outside cooperation. And because this is something that's important with a problem it's similar to the local cooperation. The problem of local cooperation is that we don't want these groups to be isolated from one another. We don't want them to lose connection. So that poses a problem. And on the other hand, when we talk about outside people, we don't want to impose people STPs, you know? We don't want our cooperation to be dependent on them understanding our language, or on the other hand, we don't want it to be simply a passive experience where we simply hear what the person does. So I think there's this issue also to think through. Well, this is what I thought for our year in review. I think we can discuss more, but this is what I thought was important for us to know before we start the year of 2024, the year of the dragon, right? I think it's the year of the dragon, because next year is the year of the snake. Okay.
Yeah,
Please.
can I just say something? Actually, I only realized this by seeing the whole presentation. I think it was very comprehensive. Rafael, it was really good. But I think it's amazing how perfect. Yeah, I agree. I feel like I should be like with a slightly more formal attire.
It's just a template, John. I mentioned it in the beginning. It's a Google template. Please don't.
But you know, I was thinking that like we ended up discussing like the challenges of creating a more grounded regions in STP and things that could bring people that are already in the group together or facilitate connection with elsewhere. And I wonder if, you know, if it isn't like perhaps the inverted path might solve this, because let's say we do agree. I don't think we have the means to discuss this now, but it would probably be a good meeting to have. If it's true that if this feeling does translate, that this feeling that we have, you know, between the working through political organization text and the draft of the social atom, social world text, if those two things do point to this kind of meteor robust publication, I have the impression that we've seen this happen in Brazil with other groups. I think that we cannot underestimate the potential of having that book and being a member of the group, the type of connection you can establish with others. Even like there's only one person in your city. If you're so inclined, you would like to have a bigger group where you are at, probably organizing a event where you are with one person presenting, or a hybrid event where you're the local contact and other people are participating online, it can actually kickstart that sort of thing as well. So there's also the inverse, where rather than asking like, oh, but we are dispersed, what do we have to do to come together? You know, the people who are already in the group. It's very likely that the things we were just talking about, creating a protocol for autonomy to be better distributed and people be able to do things slightly differently in different places. Like Reza already does this. He organizes meetings, work study groups, things like this. There are already people who are, you know, take Reza as the reference for this. It wouldn't be that much further away, you know, from having a manuscript or a published book that Reza can also gather people around, if of course, if you so desire, Reza. But just as an example, you know, or John, who's back in a place that he already had contacts, now he doesn't. Sometimes, you know, rather than presenting oneself as a individual who wants to get together with others, if you are there also representing an international collective, you have like proof that there's something concrete about that collective that you can share with people, clarify their doubts. It can invert that order, and it can lead to that capillarity, you know. So it might be the case that we could imagine that something like 2024 or up to 2025 to be a period where we're preparing tools to allow for that sort of capillarity to happen, you know, where people get the time. We need STP business cards, exactly. You know, like we use the time to get everyone on board on the basic ideas so that they feel comfortable explaining things to others. we're working on a manuscript to be published to gain like collective legitimacy on our project that people can then use the book as, you know, their name is in the book. They are in a position to mediate the content, right, in a special way. So we could also see this kind of as a transition period where we put the structure in place to welcome more decentralization. You know, we write the stuff, put the stuff on paper that then would give us this basic glue, right? And we imagine that this is okay. This is something that's going to happen a bit later in the future, in a certain sense. But perhaps that's a better order to think about, you know, strategically about these things. Yeah, I don't know.
I actually, I
discussing
think
business
that's a really good idea. I do think though that it would really require, you know, because I think we'd have to know what spots need to be filled for this big book. It would really require, I think, a driven perspective from the group for some time, I think. Not that I don't think we can do it, but I do think it might it would be, I think, something that would need to be focused in a sense.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I think that would be fun also because, I mean,
Yeah,
imagine.
you know, yeah, I mean, just think of this, like if you know the book can have that function, which is it can have it's a way for you to be in your city, and you're no longer just a person meeting other people, because if you bring this book around, you're part of the book, means you're part of the collective, means they can mediate their relation with the collective through you. It's a different type of interaction. But even if, let's say, you're joining us now, you're interested in occupying that position in the future, or not necessarily directly, but whatever. That also gives people a function while the book is being written, even if you don't feel comfortable contributing because you just arrived. Because making sure you are, you know, up to date with the content would help the manuscript become clearer, because you would ask questions, you know, things like that, but also prepare you better for once the book is out, feeling comfortable with that material and discussing it with others and so on. So it could serve a bunch of different functions, you know.
I know we're talking about corporate Leninism, but now that we're talking about, you know, the importance of just about doing St. Paul. So
Yeah, you know.
But that's a really good, I think that's a really interesting way to kind of reframe it in terms of, you know, actually using the STP as like a framework for building organizing in the first place. So I'm going to experiment with that.
Yeah, I must say, man, I was very, I mean, we did the event aware of this, but I think it was the largest attempt to see if the sort of weird things we write actually allow very orthogonal political positions to focus on the same object, you know, and discuss it. And it's like it deactivates a bunch of conflicts. It allows them to focus on common problems. So I think it was very, very, very much confirmed that what we did with the atlas, with the diagram, which was an internal process, can happen outside. Like if it's properly mediated, diplomatically thought through, and so on, you can actually get people who would never sit together to sit together, you know, within the left. I think that's a really big thing. I don't think that's a small thing at all. And
you said something there that also caught my attention about the diplomatically thinking through, because it really does show that, like, even with all the theory, like it's still doing politics in a very classic sense too. So I think that's important. I think sometimes we can appear less politically engaged than we are because we are talking about so much math and formalism, but they're not at odds. That's
true,
a practical thing to point out.
and I must say there was the high point of of the event was this, no, it wasn't the high point, but for me it was very funny. This guy who's a physicist, this Hegelian guy, says, I have a big critique of STP's text, which is that your diagrams are 2D. They should be 3D diagrams. He wanted more diagrams. So that can happen. Like we can get people who think there is less, we should have more arrows. So that was charming, I guess. So you never know.
Ultra diagrams. Ultra diagrammist. By the way, do we have a meeting for next week?
Yeah, I would say that's the last topic of the meeting, which is that we should probably just work on our calendar as well. I think that there is a bit of a debate because I know of a lot of presentations from within the group that we wanted to do. Michael and I have some ideas. Dennis is working on things. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, plus the stuff that people said in our meeting here in Brazil that they wanted to bring to the group and present and so on. But there was also a big list of people we thought about inviting at some point. There was even ideas of like dividing a bit thematically how that should go. I'm not sure if this is something we put on Dennis's lap, like research coordinator, good luck, you know, between the admin and the research coordinator. There's this list of, we can just map everything people wanted to do and then solve it. Do we spread it, decide the whole year of activities already? Do we start like parallel meetings for presentations as well? Do we limit the amount of guests? I don't know, but there is an issue there, I think. But yeah, so I don't know if we should address this now, if we should leave it for later to decide it asynchronously on WhatsApp with more people, if we should, you know, centralize a bit this tasks of overseeing how this gets structured. Yeah, but I think that's the last topic, really. From the crazy amount of excitement over the theme, I'd say probably something for another day.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was
My
already,
brain is a bit fried, but
yeah.
yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think as part of my job as RC will be to try to think about how we can simplify what we're doing a bit for the book. I don't know if simplify is the right word, but you know, make it more accessible. And because I think with our research, it's always like a mixture of what like new things that we're coming up with all the time, and then also the things we kind of left untouched for a while. But it's still useful, right? Like this, the working through political organization texts, it's so relevant, it seems, right? It's still for us, even though we wrote it over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so kind of deciding like of everything we've been talking about, what is the concise set of things that we should include in the book? But yeah, and as far as like how we coordinate these Monday meetings, I think it's someone was saying, yeah, maybe we focus more on working outside of the Monday meeting and then bringing kind of a more summarized, condensed version to Monday. But yeah, I'm open to talking about all this stuff later time.
I think this is what you brought, Dennis. I think it's very important, and I keep thinking that in a sense there is a work which is has already been partly done, and I think maybe we can people interested could connect on this. Like what we've done, what we've produced, and also checking to see what's missing, you know, the gaps. Because there are many gaps that are either we'll do this later or we do it too quickly, you know? And I think this is, I mean, before we can see what we need to do, you know, for the book as a whole, I think it would need we would need to have that work of seeing the trying to see the whole picture, trying to see the elephant, right? But I think it's a fun work also. So I think we have a book group, a group on the book? No, right? We just
I
have
think
the
we do.
yeah. I think it would be good to ramp up discussions there, so we could present something in the meeting, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Something I was thinking about recently was, I think I was talking to Gabriel about this, but the idea that maybe finding quotes from different places, from other thinkers that resonate with us, and just maybe even as a first pass at this book project, is just finding all the material out there that we already have kind of like implicitly or explicitly we're building on top of. Yeah, because I was thinking that yeah, there's a lot of entryways into STP, right? It's not just, you know, you have to. I think we've maybe in the past overemphasized like category theory and things like that, but there's so many other entryways that all the members have contributed to, and I think just having like prior works all in one place would be a useful resource.
Yeah, I think that's something to work on too. I like that idea. Though it's you know, some quotes sounds good, like a general mapping sounds like borderline impractical, right? But this is a general thing to start gathering. I think it's a really good idea.
Okay, folks, so I think this was a very information-packed meeting. Does anyone have any final remarks?
Just if anyone had any response to the comment, would we want to talk about Discord next Monday? Or at least
yeah,
take
of
some time to
course.
present on Sunday? Do we want to have org topics next Monday in general? That's all.
I don't. Do you think we'll have enough? It would be like a comment on the meeting to begin the meeting, John. Was that what you were thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt it would be a whole meeting, just more of a report back on what we talk
Yeah.
about. You know,
think
but
report is
if there's
fine.
any conversation, it could be more than 5 minutes. So we might want to like dedicate some time if people have questions or we get into the details. With the meeting with, you know, maybe not a full proposal, but enough structure to like get some input. So I just yeah, I just want to maybe have a little bit of a window there.
Yeah, I think especially since we don't have any like, you know, full scale presentations for next week, I think might be good to maybe mix in this with also mix in also maybe start talking about the book. I don't know. We'd have to see what to do next week, but I think at least for a report we have the time. We talked about that we would have that we would you know the meetings we would have a time for eventual or communication. So I think it fits in perfectly. Andy, please, and welcome.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself really quickly. This is like my first time actually sitting in on a meeting, but I've been following for a while. And I don't really have much to contribute right now. I found out about the group I took Gabriel, I took your IDU group with Daniel Tut's study group. So that was great, and that sort of turned me on to all of this. So I just wanted to introduce myself and say that I'm going to try to sit in on the meetings, and if I have something to contribute, I'll try to speak up. But yeah, that's all really.
That's so cool, Andy. Welcome.
Welcome aboard, Andy, and please feel welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so
Uh,
that's it. Are we gonna manage to wrap up 1 hour earlier than usual?
This is a victory. This is the year of the dragon.
This is the year of the dragon. Yes.
2 hour meetings is the year of the dragons.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll try to incorporate that so I don't fuck it up.
No. Don't worry. Somebody will fuck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good resolution. Okay, guys, it was great seeing you all again. As always, here's keeping the hope alive for Mega International Meeting in 2027 or whatever. So anyone who has a proposal and just 2 notes, anyone has a proposal for presenting next week or a discussion or whatever, we still don't have a meeting. We don't have any scheduled meetings for the year yet, like officially scheduled. And please remember to answer Renzo's spreadsheet. If you are able to contribute in any sum, this will be excellent. Okay. So bye everyone. Later I'll share my notes. Maybe I'll mix them with Renzo's PowerPoint so we can have all this information clearly registered for us. Okay. Bye everyone. Have a good night.
Great. Thank you
Bye.
all.
See you all.
Take care.